This is Trenton here with my second quarter 2023 in the bag. I'm going to start out with my putters. I put with the BLUEBONNET. I have a lot of BLUEBONNETs. I think I have like 12, but I'm like 10, but it depends which ones. Right now I have these blue V1 BLUEBONNETs in my bag. And one of my favorite approach putters is the COPPERHEAD, which it's a 3402. It's pretty glidey. It's still pretty stable though, but I could throw it pretty straight if I threw it as hard as I could forehand. But I use it for like touchy forehand shots that are smaller, like probably 100 to 150. This is probably one of my most used approach putters. That's why it's in the top of my bag with the putters. And one of my favorite shots I've been trying to figure out is a touchy fan grip putter approach shot, which I can throw probably 150, but I've been working on throwing it smoother with better form and throwing it softer, and I've been really liking how this disc has been doing like that. And one of my other approach putters, which is probably similar in stability, is the Dillo. This is my first Dillo, and it's pretty understable, and I like how it throws. And I throw it forehand mostly for straighter to turnover shots, kind of like the COPPERHEAD. I have one more COPPERHEAD in my bag, which is a beat up V2 COPPERHEAD, which throws really stable, and I really like how this throws in the woods, so it will fade left a little bit, but depending on how hard you throw it, it'll sometimes throw straight. But my first mid-range, I tend to put my bag by order of stability and stuff and try to keep it neat so it's easy to find. But the BB6 I use for smaller. I don't throw it as hard as some of my other mid-ranges since I'll turn it over, but I use it for in the woods with less speed, and I thought it's a really good turnover mid-range. I throw it like 250 to 275, maybe 300, but I'd probably turn it over if I give it that much power. But one of my favorite discs is the Texas Ranger. This one's in the Bravo plastic, but it throws pretty much straight with a little turn, little right to left finish. But this disc I can probably throw in between 250 to 300, maybe 325. It's a really versatile disc, and I use it a lot in the woods. I'm going to be playing Hensley Park in Longview, Texas. It's one of the only local tournaments they have that I get to play in, but there's a lot of woods, and I'll be probably using this on at least 5 holes. And another disc I throw that complements the Texas Ranger is the Midi. It's still pretty straight, but a lot stronger finish. It's definitely not close to the Walker, but you can really rely on it to get more distance when you still want the fade of the Walker. I can throw this probably 275, maybe 300 if I throw it hard. If I throw it pretty hard, it sometimes will get a little bit of right to left instead of going straighter, but I really like the way this throws, especially when you're trying to control your distance on shorter holes. But the Walker, which I throw a lot forehand, unlike the COPPERHEAD, I can throw it as hard as I want and it won't turn over, backhand or forehand. I can probably only throw it 200 feet backhand and forehand, so it's great to control distance in short holes that you have plenty of room. But probably my favorite fairway driver is the Frio. The Frio I have in 2 plastics, the Bravo and the Founders, the Emerson Q Tour series that I got signed by him at the Invitational. But the Founders tends to be more stable than the Bravo because it has a dome, which makes it tend to be more stable. And the Bravo one definitely is flatter, so I can get a little straighter, more closer to the numbers than the Founders plastic. These are great fairway drivers, especially in the woods when you don't want a ton of fade, but you still need a little so you don't turn it over. But unlike these, my Mockingbird, I throw a lot in the woods, but I still get more turnover. But it's a newer Mockingbird, so it tends to turn over more. But it still has a reliable little finish at the end, which makes it pretty much impossible unless you throw it really hard to burn it into the ground. Like more understable disc, this is a perfect amount of understability without having to worry about throwing it too hard and getting it in the ground. Mockingbird, I throw a lot in the woods too. And my last 7-speed is the BRAZOS, which it's definitely a ton more stable than the Frio. It's pretty stable. If I throw it hard, I can probably get it 275 I can probably get it 300 feet, but I usually only get a little bit of start to go right, and then usually, but it'll always crash hard at the end. Disc I use a lot too when I don't want to have to throw my forehand, which I usually throw the Mad Cat, which is a 9502, but that's pretty stable. It's fairly torque resistant. Maybe if you throw it really hard, if you give it a little Anheuser, it'll turn over, but without that, it's definitely really reliable. But I definitely throw the Dome when I need more distance without having to throw a forehand, which is, I don't get as much distance. So when I need a disc that'll turn right, it's only a harder shot than the forehand, but when I need more distance, I have to throw the Dome. And probably one of my favorite discs is the LARIAT, the Founder's LARIAT. It's really stable, kind of like my Bravo Frio, but it'll throw a lot farther, so it's pretty much like a higher speed version of this. It throws really straight. I really like these for the woods for longer shots. This I can probably get 325, 300 feet really consistently, and it throws really straight. Kind of straight with a little bit of turn, but not too much. Like you won't get a big skip or anything. One of my favorite drivers Lone Star has is the Nimitz. The Nimitz is an 11.5 -1.3, but I have 3 in this mold. The first one is orange, and it's my first Nimitz, and it's more beat in, so it tends to fade right, a little straighter, so I can get, overall it end up straight from where you aim it to maybe a little right. If you throw it Anheuser, you can get more of the turnover, but I also have this white Nimitz, which is the Nimitz I throw most often. It's still a fade, but it's still reliable. I use this disc on a lot of holes that are like 300 to maybe 350 feet, depending on the shot. But my last Nimitz is the Founder's Crush on the Concha Nimitz. And I don't throw it as much, but when I'm in a practice run and I want another Nimitz to throw, I definitely like to have the third Nimitz. But I think it's comparable to the Bravo, even though I don't know it as much as the Bravo. But one of the most stable molds Lone Star has, besides the Chupacabra and the Tombstone, which I don't bag any of those, is the WARBIRD. I can throw this disc for skip shots where you can pick a spot and let it skip on the ground for huge flare skips. They're both in the Alpha, but I thought backhand mostly with Anheuser to get more distance. I can throw it 300 feet, depending, 325 to 350 on Anheuser, and it'll come back. This one's more stable, and I like to throw it on forehands. They're a little farther than my Mad Cat, but this is a great mold. And my last mold I bag is the Bayonet. I have 3 Bayonets, and the first one I got, it started out really stable, but I tried to beat it in and grind the edge a little, give it some wear, and it turned out actually more stable than I first got it, but it's really flat, and this disc is very stable, unlike the numbers, which led me to believe that the Bayonets are a really stable mold. But I got this Lima one, but it's still pretty stable, but it actually can get a little bit of turnover on it, and I can throw this thing maybe 375, 400 to maybe 400 feet, but this one might be the more understable of the two. It's an Alpha. I got it at the Music City Open pretty recently, and I can maybe throw sometimes 300 feet. This disc goes really far. Has a lot of glide, unlike all the other bayonets. It gets it gets a good right to left, and that's my 23. Those are the discs in my 2023 in the bag. But the most important thing beside my discs is my towels I use to keep my disc dry. I usually keep 2 to 3 towels in my bag and in tournaments, and I use this chalk bag to keep my hands dry. And I use the Bushnell rangefinder for when it's not a course I know, and especially on par 4s when I don't know the distance off the tee, especially when it's like my second shot, and so I can figure out what disc to throw. This is pretty useful, especially when you don't know the course. That's helpful to know what kind of shots and compare it to your field work. But I always carry something sweet as a snack. I'd like to thank my sponsor, Lone Star Disc, which has been really helpful. And most of all, I'd like to thank God for allowing me to play disc golf. Thank you for watching.